Jumlah mahasiswa baru 115, Dok. Apakah akan dimulai, Dok?
Ditunggu sebentar.
Baik.
Emang?
Udah lewat 10 menit lebih, kita mulai aja.
Oke, baik, Dok. Selamat pagi adik-adik sekalian. Jadi hari ini kita akan video session ya untuk materi di SKS 3 sebenarnya, tapi diambilkan waktu di SKS 4. Ya, semoga masih ingat ya materi yang di SKS 3. Jadi adik-adik bisa refresh kembali seperti itu lewat video session ini. Jadi ada dua, ada helmin dan ada arthropoda. Saya akan putarkan yang helmin terlebih dahulu. Kelihatan ya?
Arthropoda, general characters and classification. Introduction. Nematodes are commonly referred to as roundworms, threadworms, or pinworms. Nematodes is one of the largest groups of metazoan. Nematodes are pseudocoelomates, bilaterally symmetrical, cylindrical body with triploblastic nature. General characters of nematoda. Some are parasites and others are free living in soil or water. Example, rhabditides. Body is long, cylindrical, without segmentation. Nematodes are characterized by a species-specific number of cells or nuclei. Body of nematodes is slender, cylindrical, unsegmented, with resistant cuticle. Body wall contains longitudinal muscles. Circular muscles are absent. Body cavity is pseudocoelom. Epidermis is syncytial. Locomotory cilia are absent. Some have ciliated gastrodermal cells. Alimentary canal is simple straight tube. Mouth at anterior end, anus at the posterior end. Digestion is both extracellular and intracellular. Intestine is non-muscular. Blood vascular system is absent. Pseudocoelomic fluid helps in the transport of nutrients. Excretory system contains H-shaped canals or excretory gland. Respiration is by anaerobic method. Nervous system consists of a circumenteric nerve ring with ganglia. Sense organs are amphids, mechanical, and receptors present at the anterior region of the body, and phasmids, glandulosensory structures in the posterior region of the body. Sexes are separate. Sexual dimorphism is present. Males are smaller with curved posterior end. They possess cloaca with 1 or 2 copulatory spicules. Females are longer with straight posterior end. Genital pole is separate from anus. Fertilization is internal. Development involves 4 molds of the cuticle. Nematodes exhibit cutely. It is a phenomenon in which cell division ceases near the end of embryonic development, so that number of cells of the adult is constant. Development includes rhabditiform larva.
A larva hatches out from an infective egg laid in the intestine of the host. It then penetrates the intestine walls and is carried through the blood vessels to the lungs. From the lungs, it moves to the lumen of the respiratory tract and then to the throat, which becomes swollen as a result of coughing. From the throat, the larva returns to the small intestine where it matures. Female Ascaris lumbricoides lay more eggs up to 200,000 a day in the lumen of the intestine. The eggs are excreted in the feces, and once in the external environment, they reach the stage of the so-called invasive egg containing a larva. Only then do they become infective. Infection occurs when the eggs reach the alimentary tract, for example, when the host consumes contaminated fruit or vegetables. Once in the small intestine, the eggs begin to develop, thus completing the life cycle of Ascaris lumbricoides.
the fluke are excreted in human feces or in the urine, depending on the species. The embryo contained in each egg develops and hatches into a tiny ciliated larva called a miracidium, plural miracidia. The miracidium only leaves the egg if it is in an aquatic environment. The miracidium moves actively in the water and within 5 to 6 hours finds an intermediate host, usually a freshwater snail. In the lungs of the snail, the miracidium forms a sporocyst, which gives rise to further sporocysts or radii. These spread inside the body of the snail and produce another stage of the fluke, the cercaria, plural cercarii, which is released into the water. The cercarii drift in the water until they encounter a plant or animal, on the surface of which they transform into another type of cyst. In this form, they are consumed by the definitive host, a human or some other mammal. However, one of the most common pathogenic flukes, Schistosoma hematobium, penetrates the organism directly through the skin. Once inside the host organism, the cercaria transforms into a schistosomulum. This is carried in the blood to the portal circulation, where it matures into an adult fluke. According to species, flukes occur in different parts of the organism. Adult flukes may live inside the human body for as long as 30 years.
In this video about difference between Taenia solium and Taenia saginata. Properties: intermediate host, disease, transmission, size, collects, troglodytes, X, infectious nature. Intermediate host, Taenia solium, pig. Taenia saginata, cattle. Diseases: Taenia solium, taeniasis and cysticercosis. Taenia saginata, taeniasis only. Size: Taenia solium. The adult form is usually about 2 to 3 meters long. Taenia saginata is usually about 5 meters in length, but may on occasion be longer, about 25 meters long. Transmission: Taenia infection is commonly among those eating raw or insufficiently cooked measly pork containing the cysticerci. Taenia saginata, human beings are infected through the eating of undercooked beef containing the cysticerci. Scolex: Taenia solium. The scolex head is lobular outline and has 4 large cup-like suckers. A conspicuous rounded rostrum armed with a double row of alternating round and small dagger-shaped hooks, 20 to 50 in number. Taenia saginata. Scolex has no rostrum or hooklet. Troglodytes. Taenia solium. The total number of troglodytes is an average of 1,000. Taenia saginata. The number of troglodytes varies from 1,000 to 2,000. Taenia solium. The gravid uterus consists of a medium longitudinal stem with 5 to 13 compound lateral branches on each side. Taenia saginata, the gravimeterus consists of a central longitudinal stem with 15 to 30 lateral branches on each side. These in turn sub-branch, leaving practically no space in between. Taenia solum. Taenia solum may produce 50,000 eggs per proglottid. Taenia saginata. Taenia saginata may produce up to 1 lakh eggs per proglottid. Eggs. The eggs are about 30 to 35 micrometer in diameter, and eggs of Taenia solum and Taenia saginata are morphologically indistinguishable. Infectious nature. Taenia solum. Infectious to humans. Human who ingested food contaminated with eggs of Taenia solum may develop cysticercosis. Eggs of Taenia saginata are not infectious. Human who ingest Taenia saginata eggs do not develop cysticercosis.
Oke, baik adik-adik. Jadi itu video tentang helmin. Kita lanjut ke arthropoda ya.
Class, welcome to phylum Arthropoda. This phylum, their name actually means jointed foot, and that's because any of their appendages that you see are going to have a jointed appearance and they're segmented. This is one of the largest phyla, actually it is the largest phyla in the animal kingdom, and this set of notes has been divided, I think, into about 5 different sections, just so that it doesn't take you an hour to complete all of the notes. You can take your time in between sets of notes, or you can go right through. I'll leave that up to you. You should have your outline in front of you, though, so that you can fill in the notes as you go through. So this is our evolutionary tree, where you can see that we've talked about mollusks and annelids, and now we're moving on. Arthropoda are a little bit more advanced than the annelids. They do have an exoskeleton for protection. So that's just where they lie on our cladogram. And the next one we'll complete, we're going to hop down to the other branch where the echinoderms are. You can see here, for the wheel of species on our planet, as far as animals go, arthropoda are virtually taking over the world. There is a great number of species of arthropods, and as you'll see, they've actually had to create extra classification categories because there are so many. So arthropods are the most successful animals, and that's because they can pretty much live anywhere. They're adapted to live in the sea, on land, in the air. There's a large number of species. They're very diverse, and their longevity is very good. Characteristics of arthropods. You can be filling these in on your packet. They have segmented bodies, and they're arranged in regions called tagmata. The tagmata would be things like the head, the thorax, the abdomen, cephalothorax, and abdomen. And some of them are actually all fused, and they're just kind of one whole body region. They do all have bilateral symmetry because they have a head end. They have paired jointed appendages, chitinous exoskeleton that they shed when they're growing. They do have an open circulatory system, and it's located opposite ours. They have a dorsal circulatory system, and then they have a ventral nerve cord. Ours is the opposite. We have a dorsal nerve cord and a ventral circulatory system. And then many of the eyes on arthropods are compound eyes, so they have multiple lenses in their eyes, and it helps them detect movement much more easily. Just to go back and talk about how they're classified, arthropods as a whole, if you want to classify them or figure out what they are, you're going to base it on the number and structure of their body segments and their appendages. So do they have one body segment, 2 or 3? And then you look to see how many pairs of legs are on these body segments. And that's how you figure out which class you're talking about. And then their appendages that you look at, you have to figure out, are they being used as walking legs? Are they modified appendages that are antenna? Do they have pinchers? Those types of characteristics will help you as well. So more reasons why they're so successful. They have a very versatile exoskeleton. It keeps them from drying out. It's very supportive structured so that it keeps their body organs located in the right places and protected. They all do have segmentation, which means their bodies can be a little bit more specialized. And it's interesting because you can take an insect and try and hold their head underwater, and they won't drown. And that's because the way that they get oxygen into their bodies is not located in their head. It's actually located in their abdomen. So they have these little holes, and you can't really see it on the picture here, but they have holes in their abdomen called spiracles, and they're just little openings to the inside of the animal. And they have tiny little tubes called tracheal tubes where the oxygen can travel throughout their body. And then it's directly linked to their cells. This is mainly for the land animals. The arthropods that live in the ocean are going to have gills for gas exchange. Arthropods in general have very highly developed sense organs. They have large eyes to help them see light and movement. They've got antennae that help them sense their environment. Some of them have specialized taste cells that will help them identify things. They do have complex behaviors. If you take a look at bees or termites, they even have a caste system where there's workers and there's a queen, and they all have a job to do. And we'll actually get into that in much more detail when we do, if you take animal behavior. And then another benefit for these guys is that they go through something called metamorphosis. And we'll talk about the different types and why that's really beneficial later on in the notes. So this just gives you an image of all the jointed legs and segments in arthropods. Here are their function of the structure of the eye. They are compound eyes that have many lenses, and not every single one of the arthropods has an eye like this. Some of them just have simple eyes. But when you're talking about a compound eye, this is what they look like. That right-hand image is an electron microscope image up close of what these eyes look like. And if you imagine that each one of those little facets can see you coming, that's why it's so hard to swat a fly. And this diagram just shows you one example of metamorphosis cycle. This would be the mosquito, and it lays its eggs in the water. The larva and the pupa live in the water and then hatch out and become the adults. Monarch butterfly, different type of metamorphosis, but it goes through its own larval pupal stage. Here are two types of appendages that you'll encounter. There's biramous appendages and uniramous appendages. Biramous appendages, like on a crayfish leg, have two divisions on the end of the appendage, and the uniramous appendage doesn't have any division, so it's just a single extension. So this is the chapter that's going to be very helpful if you can remember your order of classification. What I mean by that is kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Because there is such diversity, they have created subphyla, and the subphyla goes after phylum but before the class. And they had to create these subphyla because there is such diversity, and they needed a better way to differentiate these organisms. So we're going to start with subphylum Trilobita. Trilobites are extinct. They existed about 200 million years ago. They do have one pair of antennae and biramous appendages. And I'm sure you've seen these fossils. If you took earth science, I'm sure you discussed them a bit as well. All right, so subphylum Chelicerata. Chelicerae are jaws, and they look like pincher-like mouth parts. And there's certainly mouth parts that you don't want to get bitten by. This subphylum does not have any antenna, and they do not have mandibles. They don't have a lower jaw. They do have two body regions. Usually it's combined into a cephalothorax and then an abdomen, and they'll have 4 pairs of walking legs, or 8 legs. They have 1 pair of pedipalps. Those are up on their head, and they help hold their food. Horseshoe crabs and arachnids are the only living groups in this subphylum. The arachnids include scorpions, pseudoscorpions, daddy longlegs, mites, ticks, spiders. So we'll do the horseshoe crab first. This is class Merostomata. They have been found in the fossil record all the way back to the Triassic period, 245 million years ago. They are covered by a carapace, and it's a very large, and it has that characteristic rounded look. And then the long tail is called the telson, and that happens to be a stinger for them. And that's one of their defense mechanisms. In this diagram, you can see some of the features on the back of the shell on the dorsal part of their carapace. They have 2 compound eyes and a simple eye. And you can see where they have a hinge between their cephalothorax and their abdomen. If you flip over the horseshoe crab, then you can see some more of their distinct features in this particular subphylum. They do have chelicerae. You can see their 8 legs. They do have some assisting features like pedipalp. And then you can see they do have gills because they live in the water, and they need a way to exchange gases. All right, moving on to class Arachnida. This includes spiders, scorpions, ticks, and mites. Some characteristics about these guys. They do have 2 body segments still. Their body's constricted between their cephalothorax and their abdomen. So if you took a look at the horseshoe crabs again, there is no constriction. They just have a hinge in that area. These guys have a little waistline, if you will. The mites and the ticks, their cephalothorax and their abdomen are fused, so they don't have a division. And you'll see that in a few slides. Most of the arachnids are predators. And what they will do typically is they'll inject enzymes into their prey, and those enzymes will dissolve the prey, and then they'll just kind of suck the fluid in through their pharynx. Spiders we'll talk about first. Spiders, you can identify them because they will have 8 legs. They do not have antenna. For excretory purposes, they use something called Malpighian tubules. Respiration, they use something called book lungs or the tracheospiracles. They do have simple eyes with a single lens. Many of them will have multiple eyes, like 8 eyes. They have chelicera, which are their fangs, and they do have spinnerets, so they can produce silk for webs. This just is the diagram showing you the division with the constriction between the 2 body segments. Here's another diagram just looking at a real spider. And here's a nice close image of the chelicera. I would not want to get bitten by this. Here's a front view of the pedipalps on a spider. And these will help them in holding their food so that they can kind of chew it. I was at the library a couple weeks ago, and they had a spider presentation. And I actually learned how you can tell the difference between males and females on some species. It doesn't work for all, but on a species like this one, if you look at the pedipalps, they'll either have a boxing glove look like this guy, or it'll be more straight. If they look like they have boxing gloves, then it's a male. And if it's more straight, then it's a female. So this happens to be a male spider. Side view, just showing you parts of the respiratory system, the book lungs and the spiracles. The spiracles are going to be on the sides of their body. You can see the greenish area is going to be their book lungs in the front, where the spiracles are attached. Spinnerets, they will release silk for webs. They're usually located on the back of the abdomen. And here's the same diagram you have in your notes. You'll want to label it so that you can remember where the pedipalps are, the chelicera, and then the divisions of the cephalothorax and the abdomen. Okay, moving on to more detail, the order Araneae. These are spiders, and these spiders will have fangs with poison glands. They do have silk glands in this order as well. So if you are like many people, you either don't mind spiders or you really, really hate them. One of the ones that people really don't like are tarantulas because they tend to be rather large. Although they're very benign as contact with humans. They don't live in New York State, first of all. So you'll never encounter one of these out in the wild. But they're really not predators or bothersome to humans, but they are pretty big and they're furry looking. So this is one of the spiders that is bothersome to humans, and they do live in our area. These are black widow spiders, and you can see on the left-hand picture they are all black. If you were to look at their belly, that's where they have that hourglass red symbol on them. What they do is they secrete a neurotoxin. Neurotoxins affect the nervous system, so they're going to paralyze their prey when they bite their prey. These guys are bad for humans to get bitten by. You can acquire multiple symptoms, and they cause some complications for you. Here's the other spider that you want to stay away from. These are the brown recluse. Some people call them the fiddleback spiders, but they are going to secrete a necrotoxin. Necrotoxin causes necrosis or tissue death. The way to identify them, in case you've never seen one, is the left-hand picture is actually better for this. If you look at the cephalothorax area, it kind of looks like a violin on its side. and that's why they're called fiddleback spiders, because it looks like a fiddle or a violin. I will warn you that the next couple slides that I'll show you are going to be graphic. I'm going to show you some people who have been bitten by a brown recluse and how bad some of these bites can really get. This particular image just shows you actually mild necrosis of tissue, but the tissue is dying in the area where they bite you. This person was bitten by a brown recluse on his left thumb, and this is day 3 after the bite. Now we have day 4, and you can see the infected area or affected area is getting bigger and redder and more purple. Day 5, you can see some necrosis starting under the skin there. Day 6, you can see a lot more necrosis occurring. Here's day 9, and you can see there's some stitches hanging off his hand, and if you look in the background, you can see he's in either in a doctor's office or in a hospital room. These can get pretty bad, and especially on your hand, there's not a lot of space for that necrotoxin to go, so it's going to start killing a lot of tissue. And I think they're just using stitches to kind of hold the skin on his hand as it dies. And basically, there's really no antidote for this. Your body just has to kind of break it down and get rid of it, and it can cause a lot of damage while you're waiting. Here's day 10. This is the last slide. I don't know what the fate of this man's thumb was, but you can see how awful. And I can only imagine the cartilage and the muscle underneath, maybe even the bone, how all that got affected. You definitely want to get a treatment immediately so that, maybe they can help treat it symptomatically before it gets really, really bad. But definitely try and not upset this type of a spider. All right, order Scorpionidae. These are the scorpions, and they have large pedipalps that help them hold their food. They do have chelicerae, and they have an abdominal stinger that they use to poison their prey. Here's a diagram showing scorpion anatomy. And then we move on to the order Acari. This includes ticks and mites. And you can see how their body segments are fused. They just kind of have one big area. Here's an example of a couple ticks that you probably want to stay away from, and you want to protect your animals, your pets, your dogs and cats from these guys. They're the dog tick and the wood tick. They do transmit diseases. And usually it's because they're attached and draining blood. And while they're doing that, they're secreting saliva, which keeps your blood from coagulating. And that's where the bacteria is located that they're usually passing on and making people sick. This is some people that have contracted Rocky Mountain spotted fever. And it's from a tick bite. The ticks carry the bacteria and inject them into you, and then you get sick. You will have a high fever, headache, muscle pain. You get a rash, and it usually starts on your extremities. And it's 20% if you don't get treated for it with antibiotics. Other types of tick-borne diseases would be Lyme disease that people end up getting. And just a microscopic view of a tick. Here's another one that this is a mite that can be bothersome for people, especially those that have allergies. People who are allergic to dust mites are actually allergic to their feces. 1 gram of dust in your house can hold 250,000 droppings. Dust mites are everywhere. They're very, very small, so you'll probably never see them. And they're actually good to have because they feed off of your dead skin. The majority of dust in your house is skin that has come off your body, and they help break it down so you don't have gigantic piles of dead skin in your house. But the people that have allergies, this will be a pretty big problem for them. And then here we have little chigger mites. If you've ever looked at a rock and seen all these little red things running around, those are chigger mite larvae, and they do bite. Some people are more sensitive to their bites and they get a dermatitis or itchy skin from them. So, you know, you don't really want them running around on you. Well, that takes us to the end of this section. You can pick up with part 2 right away, or you can pause and come back to it later.
Ya, baik adik-adik. Jadi sekian untuk video arthropoda. Mungkin kalau ada pertanyaan saya persilahkan langsung unmute. Silakan apabila ada pertanyaan.
Tidak.
Ya.
Perkenalkan, nama saya Ketut dari Universitas yang 20701211153. Jadi dalam buku yang saya baca, Dok, dikatakan bahwa ada jenis arthropoda itu yang itu termasuk dalam non-human mites. Nah, itu masuk non-human mites, non-human host itu gimana, Dok? Terima kasih, Dok.
Arthropoda yang termasuk human mite dan non-human mite ya. Ya, kalau untuk human mite yang paling sering kita kenal adalah Sarcoptes scabiei yang menyebabkan penyakit skabies. Kalau misalnya adik punya adik kecil, terus dulu waktu anak-anak pernah kena tungu ya di seputaran skrotum, yaitu penyebabnya adalah skabies. Kalau untuk non-human mite itu contohnya dermacentor ya, jadi dog mite. Ada yang punya anjing, kutu anjing, pernah melihat kutu anjing, yaitu termasuk dog mite. Jadi kutu anjing itu menghisap darah di permukaan kulit anjingnya seperti itu. Itu yang non-human mite. Terjawab ya? Pertanyaannya begitu ya? Nah, ternyata yang non-human mite itu juga bisa menyebabkan penyakit namanya Rocky Mountain Spot Fever, tapi di Indonesia tidak ada. Itu penyakitnya zoonosis, jadi ditularkan dari hewan ke manusia. Seperti itu. Jadi mite itu bisa menularkan virus maupun spiroseta ya, bakteri maupun ya apapun itu yang dapat dia bawa sebagai intermediate sebagai vektor ke dalam tubuh manusia sehingga manusia terinfeksi penyakit yang seharusnya dikenai oleh binatang seperti itu. Makanya disebut zoonosis. Kalau ada pertanyaan, silakan.
Izin bertanya, dokter. Perkenalkan, nama saya Muhammad Jody Syabana, NM 8150. Tadi di video yang pertama yang di nematoda itu kan dikatakan kalau nematoda itu punya alat indera itu ada ampit dan juga ada pasmid. Itu maksudnya apa nih, dok?
Ya, pasmid itu dia sebenarnya bagian dari sistem saraf ya, dia special sense ya. Jadi dia itu sebagai indera seperti itu. Jadi lebih ke indera rangsang ya, taktil seperti itu. Jadi mengetahui kondisi lingkungan sekitar, misalnya suhu, tekanan, kemudian ancaman bahaya. Jadi cacing yang mempunyai organ plasmid disebut plasmida dan tidak mempunyai organ plasmid disebut aplasmida seperti itu. Jadi dia seperti indera ya, special sense, terutama rangsang rangsang tubuh, suhu, kemudian tekanan, kemudian ancaman seperti nyeri ya itu. Di slide saya juga ada, kalau tidak salah yang Sercenenta itu adalah yang plasmida. Ya, yang Secernenta itu adalah plasmida, kemudian yang Adenoporaya itu adalah yang aplasmida. Terjawab kira-kira?
Terjawab dokter, terima kasih dokter.
Ya baik, silakan pertanyaan yang lain. Langsung unmute ya, apabila ada pertanyaan. Ide Ayu Kartika Maheswari. Hadir ya?
Hadir, dokter.
Bagaimana, ada pertanyaan, Dayu?
Untuk sekarang belum, dokter.
Oke. Made Anggiana Mevia. Hadir?
Hadir, dokter.
Ada pertanyaan?
Untuk saat ini belum ada, dokter.
Izin bertanya, dokter.
Ya, silakan. Bagus ya.
Iya, jadi perkenalkan, nama saya Bagus dengan NIM belakang 081. Yang ingin saya tanyakan itu tadi kalau nggak salah ada golongan crustacea. Crustacea, apakah bagaimana sih contoh infeksi Nika, dok, kalau crustacea?
Ya, crustacea disebut juga golongan udang-udangan ya. Jadi sebagian besar yang crustacea itu lebih ke second intermediate host maupun dia intermediate host. Untuk cacing-cacing seperti Angiostrongyllus cantonensis ya. Jadi di Malaysia dan di Vietnam itu ada orang yang suka makan jumping salad. Ada yang tahu jumping salad ya? Jadi salad ya, sayur, buah, itu diisi hewan hidup di atasnya. Diisi keong, diisi crayfish. Nah, ini crayfish ini salah satu golongan crustacea. Disebut juga udang karang ya. Jadi udang karang itu kalau dimakan itu cangkangnya empuk. Jadi langsung dimakan dengan salad. Nah, ternyata crayfish itu di dalamnya mengandung Angiostrongyllus cantonensis. Jadi Angiostrongyllus itu dapat menginfeksi paru-paru. dan jaringan yang dia lewati sehingga menyebabkan pasiennya jadi sesek, kemudian reaksi radang lokal, batuk darah, bahkan bisa sampai ke otak. Seperti itu. Kalau untuk penyakit yang ditimbulkan oleh krustasea sendiri, biasanya dia lebih ke mekanik ya. Jadi misalnya kalau lobster, dia ukurannya sangat besar, itu dia punya kemampuan untuk menggigit dan mencengkeram. Jadi manusia yang tidak sengaja memegang lobster itu dapat mengalami luka oleh karena digigit oleh gigi-giginya yang tajam seperti itu. Ya, kalau krustasea yang paling banyak itu memang golongan udang ya. Udangnya banyak ya, ada yang udang karang, ada yang namanya prawn, ada yang udang yang lebih besar ya. Ada lobster seperti itu. Ya, macam-macam sih.
Terima kasih, dokter.
Kalau udang karang itu, crayfish itu dia pedipalpnya itu besar ya. Beda dengan udang yang sering kita makan ya, yang prawn itu pedipalpnya kecil. Yang suka makan crayfish itu orang-orang di Asia Timur ya, termasuk Asia Tenggara beberapa. Tapi Indonesia sepertinya minat orang makan udang karang itu sedikit. Ada lagi?
Izin bertanya, dokter.
Ya.
Baik, terima kasih kesempatannya. Perkenalkan, nama saya Nika Danovia Puspita Dewi, NIM belakang 175. Tadi dalam video untuk arthropoda itu ada disebutkan arthropoda yang menghasilkan nekrotoksin sehingga menyebabkan nekrosis pada jaringan. Apakah nekrosis pada jaringan itu hanya bersifat lokal di satu tempat saja atau bisa menyebar ke jaringan lainnya, dokter? Terima kasih.
Ya, jadi memang benar sekali ya, terutama golongan yang terutama golongan yang ada ya, skorpion dan laba-laba. Jadi memang toksinnya untuk Lactrodерus mactan dan Lexoceles itu adalah neurotoksin. Jadi dia semakin dekat dengan sistem saraf pusat, maka neurotoksinnya akan semakin berbahaya. Kita tahu neurotoksin itu bekerja dengan memblok reseptor asetilkolin, kemudian akan menyebabkan paralisis otot. Nah, apabila yang paralisis itu adalah otot-otot penting seperti otot pernafasan, itu pasiennya bisa meninggal karena gagal nafas. Tapi kalau gigitannya jauh dari susunan saraf pusat, yang dimaksud susunan saraf pusat di sini adalah otak dan tulang belakang, itu efeknya akan lebih minimal. Jadi dia akan perlu waktu ya untuk mencapai jantung, kemudian baru SSP, sehingga efeknya itu tidak secepat apabila dia digigit di dekat susunan saraf pusat seperti itu. Ada lagi yang lebih yang lebih beracun ya, itu namanya hemotoksin ya. Dia punya trombolitik, tapi itu dikeluarkan oleh ular ya. Ular kita tidak pelajari di sini. Dia punya hematotoksin, neurotoksin, kemudian punya trombolitik. Jadi dia dapat membunuh lebih cepat dibanding dengan arachnida. Seperti itu. Kalau trombolitik itu dia mengganggu pembekuan darah, jadi pasiennya perdarahan, terus ya terjadi DIC namanya disseminated intravascular koagulopati, kemudian terjadi kelumpuhan otot-otot organ penting ya, kemudian terjadi hemolisis, jadi hemolisis darah seperti itu.
Baik, terima kasih dokter.
Kalau Lexoceles sering juga disebut laba-laba pertapa karena seringnya hidup di gua. Kalau yang Lactrodectus mactan itu yang ada di film Spider-Man. Ada pertanyaan lagi? Untuk kasus kematian akibat laba-laba termasuk cukup kecil dibandingkan dengan ular. Kalau ular itu bisa sampai 100.000 kematian per 1 juta penduduk. Kalau untuk laba-laba itu kurang lebih 1 kematian di antara 1.000. Jadi sangat kecil sekali ya. Kemudian nekrosisnya bisa terjadi dalam waktu 7-10 hari. Kalau misalnya tidak ditangani bisa membuat kerusakan jaringan yang permanen seperti itu. Ada yang lain pertanyaan? Ada pertanyaan lain? Nyoman Chandra Andika. Hadir?
Hadir, dokter.
Ada pertanyaan, Chandra?
Mungkin belum ada, dok.
Satria Wibawa.
Baik, dokter.
Oh, ini bimbingan saya ya. Gimana Satria?
Untuk saat ini masih belum, dokter.
Oke. Halo dokter. Video yang tadi yang saya putarkan itu lebih banyak ke arthropoda penyebab penyakit ya. Ada juga beberapa yang sebagai penyebar penyakit. Kalau yang penyebar penyakit itu lebih ke nyamuk, lalat gitu ya. Tik juga bisa, mite juga bisa. Tapi sebagian besar yang tadi itu adalah yang sebagai penyebab penyakit. Kalau begitu saya tanya apa nama tungau debu rumah, nama spesies atau nama Latin dari tungau debu rumah. Yang bisa silakan langsung unmute.
Izin menjawab, dokter.
Ya. Silakan langsung.
Saya ingin coba menjawab. Nama saya Gede Wesunedi. Jadi tungau debu rumah itu mungkin masuk ke dalam family Pirogli Pteronophidae. Terus spesiesnya itu Pteronisinus dan ordonya itu Acariformes.
Spesiesnya
Mungkin itu dok. Terus nama ilmiahnya itu kalau nggak salah Dermatophagoides Pteronisinus. Kalau spesiesnya itu Pteronisinus dok.
ya benar
Sekian,
ya.
terima kasih dokter.
Akibat Pteronisimus. M kayaknya itu ya. Ya, jadi kalau adik-adik sering jemur kasur atau jemur bantal, hati-hati kena tungau debu rumah ya. Karena itu ada di sekitar kita, terutama di kasur. Kalau nyapu juga ya bisa aja ketemu tungau debu rumah. Dokter Kapti, apakah ada tambahan, dok?
Nggak ada.
Baik, adik-adik silakan yang ingin bertanya. Dokter, apakah kita cukupkan, dok?
Ada yang bertanya lagi? Jadi cukupkan aja.
Sementara belum ada pertanyaan ya. Dokter, mungkin ini dok izin share pertanyaan ditanya ahli. Ada satu pertanyaan yang ini dok agak rancu seperti itu, host pengangkut dok. Itu bahasa Inggrisnya kita transport.
Ya.
Itu bisa kita sebut vektor begitu dok?
Reservoir host.
Reservoir.
Bukan apa namanya? Hostes transport. Jadi larva itu ada di dalam hostes, tetapi tidak berkembang. Misalnya pokoknya larva tidak berkembang di dalamnya hostes. Nanti hostes itu dimakan oleh hostes yang kedua. Terus itu yang dimakan oleh manusia.
Berarti itu seperti parathenic host ya, dok?
Ya, parathenic host juga.
Oh, parathenic host, oke. Berarti hospes pengangkut itu parathenic host ya, adik-adik ya. Ini ada ditanya ahli pertanyaannya.
Betul, parathenic host.
Oke, dok. Oke, adik-adik. Apa ada pertanyaan lagi? Tidak ada? Apakah kita akhiri? Kita akhiri ya, Dek.
Kalau tidak ada, ditutup aja.
Ya, baik. Terima kasih atas partisipasinya dalam video session ini. Semoga lancar menjawab post test. Saya ucapkan selamat pagi.
Terima kasih dokter.
Terima kasih dokter.
Terima kasih
banyak
semuanya.
dokter.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih dokter.
Terima kasih dokter.
Terima kasih dok.
Terima kasih dokter.
Terima kasih dokter.
Terima kasih semuanya. Jaga kesehatan.